Welcome back to another episode of the Jesus Cartel. All sorts of fun things are happening our way. How are things going for you, Clay?
You know what, man? Things are great. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, Andrew just told me the get to know you segment. I'm not happy about it. But anyhow, other than that, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, his kids picked it, and so it sounds like he has a problem with his kids. It's not with me. And so, it's a good question. So, look, this is the question. All right, maybe you didn't hear it right. The question is, if you could have any celebrity guest on the Jesus Cartel podcast, who would you pick? That seems like a fun question.
You know what? You just changed the question.
I didn't change the question. That is the question.
All right. That is changing the question because
What did you think the question was?
I thought the question was if you had your own talk show, who would be the first person, first celebrity guest that you would have?
This is a talk show.
Yeah, but I have great regard for the Jesus Cartel. I'm not going to just let anybody come on the Jesus Cartel. You know? I mean, all right, so because my kids asked this question.
So wait a second. So the dilemma in your mind is that some celebrity may taint the authority of the Jesus Cartel?
Amen. Amen. I mean, think about it. All right, so and we're not on split screen here, so we're going to be able to see both of us the whole time, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Right back and forth. So here's the deal. So because my kids asked this question, my daughters asked this question, here's the problem. I don't really care about celebrities. I don't really know a lot of celebrities. I couldn't tell you who, was in almost any movie besides the greatest movie of all time, The Blues Brothers. And with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi. But other than that, I'm just not really big into celebrities and stuff. So if you ask me if you had your own talk show,
Sure.
who would your number one first guest be, and you could choose anybody, then I would choose Taylor Swift. Why? Because my daughters are the one that asked the question. My daughters would think that I'm really cool, and she would bring more ratings, good and bad, to my brand new talk show. So if you started with the number one topic person on your deal, then that's who you would do, because you're setting a standard of the best and the most talked about on your talk show for the first time, because I'm thinking about my children, but I'm also thinking about money and my talk show and stuff. Now, if you ask me who needs to come on Jesus Cartel, then man, I'm thinking, you want a person that's walking this thing out, that's doing what God's called them to do, then I'm thinking Tim Tebow. Either Tim Tebow or Terry Poland. The only reason why I said Tim Tebow is because you said celebrity.
Yeah.
And Terry Poland's not a celebrity, but he's walking this thing out, and he's a mentor to mine and yours. So anyhow, that's where I'm at. So I got three answers for you.
I understand the Terry thing. You were saying right before we started recording that you didn't think he was important, so he wouldn't qualify as a celebrity.
That is not what I said.
That's the way I remember it. Man, Taylor Swift on a talk show, just like, you want to be cool at what cost, though? You know what I mean?
At the cost of millions of viewers. Isn't that why you have a talk show? To have people look at it? I'm not trying to have a talk show. But for the people that do you think that Pat McAfee wouldn't want to have Taylor Swift? He's paying Aaron Rodgers all this money just to come.
I guess it's about more than views for me. It's about who is viewing.
Yeah.
Right? And so in any talk show with Taylor Swift, here's a perfect example. I've never seen a talk show with Taylor Swift on it.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's been on a bunch of them. I've never seen it. Why? Because I'm not the kind of guy that watches stuff like that.
Right.
And if I have my own talk show, those aren't the people I want listening to me.
Yeah.
And so, there are a very select group of people who can listen to Taylor Swift and still have my respect. And that's a short list. Yeah. And so, I don't think I could do that.
So who would you be your first celebrity guest?
Probably if we're going talk show, I'm going Tim Kennedy. Tim Kennedy is a very famous military personnel. He does a lot of stuff. People who are, you don't even have to be isolated in that community to know who he is. He was also at one point the #1 ranked middleweight in the world in the UFC. And so he is a celebrity. I wouldn't say he's a household name, but still very much a celebrity.
Yeah, I never heard of him.
Yeah, he would be, exactly. That's my point. You're right. I want people to listen to my talk show that know who Tim Kennedy is. So here's what you need to know about Tim Kennedy. Think about all the toughest guys that you know. And if they were in a room with Tim Kennedy, he'd kill all of them. That's myself included. We're talking about the most savage of savages,
Right.
But also a really good man with a great heart for people, Christian man, doing like when the whole thing happened in Afghanistan and there was all those people trapped, he got his own crew and his own team, and they funded to be able to get people out of there. When all this stuff happened with Hamas, they funded their own team. You know, they had to get permission from the government, but they still funded their own team to get people out of there and get them back, Americans back home. And so they got a group called Save Our Allies that does stuff like that. It's just somebody I respect a lot. If we're doing the Jesus Cartel, I would bring on John Lovell, who is kind of in that same realm of influence, but he does some pastoring also. Gotcha. And so, you know, he speaks at a lot of churches and you know, does some guest appearances and sermons and stuff like that. Just a fantastic guy. You know, he's more, you know, Tim is somebody I would say definitely attends a strong church. John is someone who helps lead a strong church, you know, and so that's kind of the difference between the two. But if I'm bringing somebody on, you know, I'm trying to, you know, my whole goal outside of just building people in the faith is also to equip strong men to keep our country strong and the family unit strong, to help build good men, good fathers, good leaders, you know. And so those are two men who do that. And so that's who I would probably bring on. I only have two answers. That's not as good as yours.
Well, you said Terry Poland too. So I mean,
no, not after what you said about him. I felt like I had to pull back from there.
Just so you know, we had no previous conversation.
Clay doesn't remember it. That, you know, y'all can decide why he doesn't remember it. I'll leave that to y'all's imagination. But I very clearly remember that conversation.
You know that we've had some really good feedback on our communication and leadership deal. Even last week, you know, I think it's like part 5, you know, and we got new people jumping on board, listening to that, having a good time. Even had a pastor friend of ours ask to clarify a few things. Had, you know, another one, you know, say that, you know, really learning stuff and everything. And I just think it's been really good.
Yeah, what he asked a really good question. Do you remember what it was off the top of your head?
Yes.
It was about.
So it was about when I was talking about my expectations of staff, and I said, you know, that I'd found that over time there was some things that some of my staff members were doing that I didn't really approve of, and so I'm trying to wonder within myself, you know, maybe I expect too much. So, you know, maybe they're not meeting my expectations because I expect too much. So I wrote down a list of things that I expected. Now, they were all pretty much moral things. You know, they were not job specific at all. They were like moral things. And so I wrote them down, and then I gave them to my staff, and I asked them, what do you think about this? And they was like, this is all basic. This is all easy. And so I gave it to all of them. And then and said, hey, look, even when I'm not critiquing you on these things, I still expect them to happen. Well, this pastor knows me. Yeah. And so by me saying that, it kind of implied that I don't follow up on it, that I don't stay on top of it, that I don't, you know, continue to work with them on those things. And so he just asked. And so the difference was these were more of moral expectations. Hey, I expect you to be in church. I expect you to pray to God regularly. I expect you to not have, you know, any long-term sin in your life. I expect you to be part of a ministry outside of Fresh Start. You know, I expect you to be part of a small group. You know, those kind of things like that.
Giving was also on there.
Sir?
Giving was also
giving
on there.
Was
be a
also
regular
on there.
giver.
And there was a list there, you know, basically just being a well-rounded Christian. And so with those, and it's not that I just gave it and we never revisited. We do have those behind the counter at Fresh Start. We have them in different offices. A lot of people have them in their rooms. And then when we have a staff meeting, I usually pass them out again.
Yeah.
And they've really never changed. Now that is different than if I am running a small group or or organization within the church. So if I'm in charge of the parking lot team, and the reason he asks is because he says, I see you communicating vision a lot more than just giving it one time and not revisiting it, And I say, you're right. This is something different. Now, if I'm running the parking lot team, hey, we're going to set the vision. We're going to do the why. We're going to do the what. We're going to get together. And every time we get together, we're going to emphasize at least one of those areas every single time.
Yeah.
Not that we're going to go over everything every time, but we're going to remind them, whether it's casually or whether it's, just real concrete, that, hey, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And this is why you need to smile. And this is why you need to wave. And this is why you need to hold a sign in this part. And hey, and we're doing that. So I think it's two totally different things as far as my moral expectations of my staff and the vision behind what we're doing, something specific that's task oriented, so to speak.
Yeah,
So
that makes
I think
sense.
that's part of where the question. So we appreciate pastors listening to us, man. Who are we that lead pastors are listening to us on leadership?
Yeah.
And this guy's doing some great stuff, and then for him to ask questions about it, generally trying to understand, man, it's pretty humbling for me, and I know also for you, and I think it's just a role that God's got us in right now that's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. The reason I brought up the giving specifically was just because I wanted to, that's an area that it's pretty clear you can't really keep your thumb on. You know what I mean? There's you can ask, but you can't hover over that.
Right.
And so, with all of the different areas of life and the specifics of what we expect from people, it's impossible to keep your thumb on all those things. There is too much all at once. But I think that what makes that okay is that these aren't expectations that are set by you. These are expectations set by the way that Christ lived. And so no one should ever be confused about what those expectations are, because when someone steps outside of them, we don't say, hey, our rules. We say, hey, is that the way that Christ has called you to live? And that is what makes it short of the expectation, not because this is a cool list of rules that Clay decided. Is you analyze the life of what someone who reflects Christ should be, and you wrote those things down. And so it's pretty easy for me to remember that list, because anything that I do outside of the character of Christ is also going to violate that list of expectations. And so there's no confusion on my end. And and I
appreciate you sharing that. It's not like trying to be a dictatorship or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think another thing is important because, there are people that are listening to us that are going to come up with a list now,
Yeah.
and I understand that. And so, just know that, like Andrew said, there was no real opinions in there. It was all, based biblically on what a Christ-like life should look like. But the other thing is that before I started enforcing these things, or whatever you want to call it, I had them look at it and say, do you disagree with anything here? And every person's reaction is like, no, if I'm not doing this, how can I be working for a ministry? But there has been times where those same people have not hit that list 100%.
Sure.
And so when they're looking at it, when they're looking at it fresh, they all agree. But then, sometimes our focus shifts sometimes to where we don't realize how far out of God's will we're getting. And then this list, can kind of be a reminder, just let's shift back into that,
Yeah.
And I think it's good for all of us. But we talk on here a lot about accountability and self-assessment and stuff. And do you know more people are coming to me, and I was going to ask you if you're experiencing the same thing, but more and more people are coming to me and talking about, man, I was self-assessing, or the importance of looking at this, or the importance of looking like that. And it's becoming common language of a lot more people. You know, I had a talk with a buddy that I like to talk to at 6:30 in the morning sometimes. Really enjoy waking him up when it's raining and he wasn't going to get up, you know, that early. And because he is a farmer, you know, and so he didn't have to get up so early. But this morning, you know, we were talking, and he starts talking about, man, you know, this person needs to you know, look at their self first before they go to this side. He needs to self-assess, you know. And so we start to hear more of this becoming common language.
Yeah.
You know, and I like to think that Jesus Cartel has something to do with that.
Sure.
But I think that I know for people around me, we've just heard people say more and more of that. Have you experienced the same thing?
Yeah, for sure. You know, it takes me about 4 hours a week. I work 4 hours a week on Jesus Cartel.
Okay.
It takes me a while to set up, takes a while to film, takes a while to edit, and it takes a while to publish. And so I probably talk to people about our podcasts, not you, 2 to 4 hours a week also.
Amen.
And so it has become a regular part of my life where, you know, before Jesus Cartel, you know, I had a lot to do. And now I've lumped in, you know, 16 hours just on the production side a month, you know, plus the 2 to 4 hours. You know, I probably put 24 to 30 hours a week just regarding this podcast. And that's really cool. That's really cool. And to me, those hours of additional counsel that I get to have with people are well worth the 16 hours of production, because I have watched growth happen through these people and through their lives and stuff like that. And it's like, there was a reason we're doing this. You know, we didn't do it. We're not doing it for money. Right. No one got a raise for it, right? We're not doing it because we didn't have nothing else to do. Very far from true.
Right.
And so this is, if anything, this has really made my schedule like tight. And but it is accomplishing exactly what we hoped it would accomplish. And I also want to say, you know, regarding the expectations that you were talking about, you know, when you do have to have those meetings, the fun thing that everybody calls those kind of meetings are come to Jesus meetings. But when your expectations are that of Jesus, that's actually literally what they are.
Amen.
This is when you've stepped out of these expectations, you've stepped out of what you've been called to do. It's an actual come to Jesus meeting, a literal come back to the path that he's called you to live. And I like that.
Well, and that's the reason why we do a fast at the beginning of the year, you know, just to focus this year, to get back into focus on Christ. But it should be living a fasting life all the time.
Yeah.
But if this is a way to remind people to get back to that, you know, by having a 21-day fast at the beginning of the year, so be it. If having a list of expectations that, you know, really are biblical expectations is a way for that to happen, hey, that's good.
Yeah.
To have that meeting, a come to Jesus meeting, to bring people back to that, if that's what it takes, that's good. If listen to the Jesus Cartel on you know, Friday or Saturday, you know, or whenever it is, brings you back to that to get ready to have another good week, hey, so be it.
Yeah.
You know, I could be arrogant and say that, well, we shouldn't have to do all those things. Well, but we do, you know, and not just for other people, but for us too. You know, I mean, for me and you to plan our schedules around being here at a certain time is a big deal for us. You know, number one, our schedules are so flexible and they change all the time so much that that's difficult. But at the same time, it's special because we do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when you set aside to turn away from food and turn to the Lord, then it's special. And God always does amazing things. Well, every time we come in here to Jesus Cartel, because we've committed to this, it's special. Not because of us, but because of God in us. Each and every time. I mean, we haven't had an episode of Jesus Cartel that I didn't walk out of here feeling great.
Yeah.
But yet we always know that we never know what we're going to walk in here and even talk about. But yet at the same time, we always walk out of here feeling great. Why? Because God's meeting us here.
Sure.
You know, this is a set aside time where we're meeting with God, not to puff ourselves up, but to help strengthen other people.
Yeah.
And by us focusing on other people, we're also strengthened, you know, because we need to grow too, you know. And so it's just been great,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know.
You know, the other thing that, you know, just regarding the Jesus Cartel and the time that we put in and all the different stuff that just really culminates to make this something special. You know, you kind of referenced it similar to fasting in a way, because it is set aside and it's particular. We were talking to somebody yesterday about fasting, and I want to just take a second to encourage anyone who's experiencing some good things through fasting. You don't have to stop.
Yeah.
You don't have to stop. So like when you see like church-wide fast or things like this, they set, you know, kind of a beginning and end date. If you're seeing the Lord moving through something in your mind, in your spirituality, in your physical health, and all these things, you don't have to stop because the fast is ended. If you're seeing growth, continue to press in where you're growing. You know, you'll know when you're not growing anymore. Don't stop just because it's like, I don't really let God set time parameters or let people set time parameters for me for God. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, if God's moving, I'm going to be there. If he's doing something at church on a Tuesday night, that's not a church night, but I'll show up. You know what I mean? Because he's moving. And so that's where we are. And so if God's moving through what you're doing, man, I just want to encourage you to keep doing it.
And that's important, you know, and you know, let's just, you know, I'll just say this. I've been doing this particular kind of fast, you know, in this time frame for many years. And every single year, I give up a lot of stuff. But something that I give up, I just never take back. You know, I think we've talked on here before, but last year it was caffeine. I don't want to go into that whole deal, but for all of last year, you know, I just didn't, you know, drink any caffeine. It was one of lots of things that I gave up for 3 weeks, but then I just didn't pick it back up. Well, this year I hadn't picked it back up yet either. So, you know, now we're going on, you know, well over in a year of no caffeine. Not that caffeine's the devil or anything like that. I'm just saying, if God's put on your heart to fast certain 10 things over this last 3 weeks or whatever, find one or two of them that you're like, man, you know what? I've done fine without that. And I think that it would be beneficial to me if I was able to never add that back and just don't add that back. In fact, I may pick the thing that I miss the most because that's probably what's got the biggest hold on you.
That's a good point.
You know, and that would give you the biggest impact. Now, don't pick something that you can't deal without. But
if fast my family.
Yeah. But if you know, or don't, you know, and you don't want to fail, so you might, you know, might not be strong enough to pick the biggest thing that you gave up to never go back to yet, but you might have to pick number 5 this time, or you know, or number 7 this time, or whatever. But if you could pick number 1 or number 2 or whatever, then to never go back to, it would have the biggest impact. Yeah. But I would rather you just pick whatever you can. My youngest daughter, Elena, fasted some things that I didn't think she should have fasted. You know, if we're being honest, and she had good reasons for it.
Was this recently or was this?
Yeah, right now.
Okay, it's right now.
Yeah,
gotcha. Right
now she's fasting some things that I didn't think she should have. I really wish that she would have come to me and talked to me about it. I really think it's a little too hardcore, and I really think that that the things that she focused were positive things in her life. And I wish that we would have talked about it. So I wouldn't want her to give up those things forever, just because, you know, she was doing more of a hardcore fast, you know, and everything. And so, but at the same time, there are things that she fasted that would be good for her to not go back to, you know, like for her, for instance, you know, she fasted, she didn't think that fasting sweets and starches and all that, like most people do, was good enough because she already does that.
Sure.
So she felt like that was a cop-out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So she fasted some things that were actually good for her, just because she wanted to. She felt led to do it, and I mean, who am I to disagree?
Yeah.
You know, and so everybody, but I would have. She gave me an opportunity, you know, but everybody's got to look at those things for herself.
Yeah.
You know, but like Andrew said, you know, the man that we were talking to about that yesterday, respect 100%. But to us, it just seemed obvious. Hey, you feel better when you're doing this and not doing that. Why don't you just keep doing this and not doing that?
Yeah.
You know, and we wasn't asking them to go on a complete fast for, you know, for the rest of their lives. We're just saying this one part of your fast.
Sure.
You know, now you're not going to get the same results that you got doing the whole fast, but you'll get better results by not taking back on everything. So why don't you just keep doing this part?
Sure.
You know, or keep this cut out. So anyhow, I love fasting. I love talking about it. We love checking our bodies, self-assessing, accountability. All that goes together. You know, it all goes together. So if you ever need any help with that, we're both really good at it. Like to visit with it on it. And the point is, we want to deny our flesh to become closer to Christ. But in addition to that, we don't want to let anything control us from reaching our full potential in Christ. Last night was the first time that I've eaten a ribeye in I don't know how many years. One of my favorite things to eat.
So why has it been so long?
Because I was focusing more on not eating as much fatty meat. So I switched to sirloins and filet mignon. And but I really enjoyed ribeyes more. Still enjoy ribeyes more. Well, the other day when I was at Sam's, I'm not committed to that. That was just hadn't done it. You know, I quit doing it for a while, but it wasn't something that I said I'm never eating a ribeye again, you know. So I was at Sam's the other day, and they had these thin cut ribeyes that didn't have as much fat on them and stuff. And I didn't know how many people were showing up at the house, so I got a 6-pack of them, ended up not cooking them. So last night, I cooked them for me and Becky and Cooper, you know, one apiece, and I got 3 more. And they were, like I said, they were thin ribeyes. Didn't have as much fat on them stuff, but still got a good bit more fat on them than any other steak, you know. And so we ate them last night, and I remembered how much I loved them, and I probably won't eat them again for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, because I don't want anything to control me.
Yeah.
You know, it's still my favorite. Still like it better than the rest of them, but I'm not going to add that much fat to my life.
Yeah.
When especially I got other options. You know, so eating it once and eating a ribeye once at the last several years, hey, it was great. I really enjoyed it. They flame up better because the fat attracts the fire, and they're better seared. But at the same time, I can do it without them too.
Sure.
You know.
Another thing, you know, when you're living a fasted lifestyle and you continue to, it's not just like make a decision and this is you forever. It's continue to seek the Lord on things that He might be leading you into, and you'd be surprised some of the things that you'll learn and find out. You know, I love a good Mountain Dew. I like Mountain Dew in every flavor. I don't think they put out one I don't like, and but probably I've had maybe 3 in the last 5 years, and it's been a long time since I had one at all. And what I had come to realize is each of the times I had one since, I got horribly sick. Because really, probably not meant to consume what's all in, you know, a lot of the carbonated drinks and stuff that we have. And when your body is like not adapted to having them, you see how it really reacts to it. And you know, my children don't drink carbonated drinks, not because I'm a terrorist. It's just we don't have them in the house. Right. You know, there's no reason to. We drink tons of milk. They drink juice. They've got plenty of stuff they like to drink. We just don't keep anything carbonated in the house. Well, they went somewhere not too long ago, and somebody gave them a Coke. All 3 of them threw up, you know, just from a Coke. Yeah. And it's just, it's strange the things that you learn when you're listening to the Lord, and he tells you to let something go and that this will be good for you. And then you're like, oh, let me try. For ribeyes is one thing, but it was another thing for that because they got ill, physically ill. And we all have. And, that was just kind of a point where you recognize, like, definitely don't want to give this to them regularly. You know what I mean? If this is how it makes them feel, just having not had it and then trying to, there's something in there that's probably not good for them. And so, I think the Lord, because I'm always praying that the Lord guide us into, greater health and restore everything that was lost in the garden. And good health is like perfect health is one of those things. And so, I pray that he lead me into that and lead my family into eating right and eating well and living well and taking care of ourselves. And so it's just part of that for us.
Well, and I do want to share this, and I've debated this whole time we've been talking, but I do want to share this about one of the things that Elena gave up. And the reason why I debated it is because she's 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And when I explain it to our people, they're going to be like, man, what's up with that? And they're going to think, but you got to remember, this girl's been fasting since she was young.
Yeah.
We've always done the fast, and our rule with our kids were you can eat whatever they serve you at school. And then when you get home, we're going to eat on the fast. Mm-hmm. So if they have a hamburger and french fries at school, you eat a hamburger and french fries. And when you get home, no snacks, no chips, no nothing. And we're going to eat meat and vegetables for supper, and we're not going to have the drinks and not have so they've been doing this for years, But here's my 20-year-old daughter. I mean, she loves the Lord. And she doesn't think that the food deal is really even a good basis for her fast because she's already eaten that way.
I feel that way myself.
Right. So she doesn't take the cop out that most people would. So she fasted listening to Christian music. Listening to music as a whole, but not even listening to Christian music in her car. And I asked her about that. Aren't you supposed to deny your flesh so you can become closer with Christ? Speaking God's word into your life. She also fasted podcasts. And the only podcast she listens to is Christian podcasts. So she hasn't been listening to
that's not of God.
So she hasn't been listening to that. So I'm like, so explain to me your motivation. Because obviously I'm not going to call her foolish or stupid or nothing because she's not.
Sure.
She's very intelligent. She's very in tune with the Lord and what God has for her. She has her, a very strong relationship with the Lord. So I asked her, she said, well, here's the deal. I'm going to a prayer service at the bridge every morning at 6:00, for 21 straight days. And I'm going there. And on the way there, I want to be in silence because I want to be asking God to reveal to me what he wants to teach me through this service. And then when I go, they're already going to be playing 2 songs. So I'm getting my worship songs without me listening to them in my car, and stuff. And then we're going to pray. And then on the way home, I'm going to let God reveal to me a deeper revelation of what he showed me during this service. And she said, and then the rest of the day, I'm not really in my car that much. I don't, I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff going on. And so it's no big deal, and everything's cool. And I want to be able to focus more, on just listening to God myself instead of just being fed from God from other people. And she said, not forever. I'm still, going to messages, still hanging out, going to community groups. I mean, she's not isolating herself from the world. But she said that she just found herself constantly needing a voice in her ear, constantly leading some kind of noise, some song, something going on. And she didn't want to be reliant on hearing from God from the outside world. She wanted to be able to also hear from God herself directly. And so that's why she did it.
Yeah.
Hey, I thought that was really mature at her age.
Yeah, I got to say I'm Team Elena on this one for sure. I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that decision. That doesn't seem off-putting to me in the least, because I have myself experienced and mentored a lot of people who have experienced when Christianity and things like that become background noise. And that's a yucky place to be, where you can listen to 5 worship songs on your commute and have not even been in any part of worship the whole time you were there. You know what I mean? And so silence, it forces you to confront what's really within you. And I think that's a really good thing. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I like it all, except the fact you're not listening to Jesus Cartel, but you know, she'll make up for it.
Well, here's the deal. And look, you know me real well. You know how I feel about my kids. You know how I feel about your kids. But I'm just going to tell you, if you want to call her stupid, it sounds like she's not going to hear this. And so
she's going to listen to it at some point.
This is your chance, if there ever was one.
No.
All
I
right.
think she's what she's doing is very admirable.
Yeah.
But you know, we don't always share everything with everybody, because everybody's not ready to hear everything.
Sure.
You know,
Absolutely.
And I don't want anybody to feel bad about where they are. And I sure don't want anybody to look at her funny because of where she is, you know, because she is at a higher level than most with her fasting, with her relationship with God. But these are the type actions that make her that way too, because she's not scared to deny herself.
Absolutely.
You know, she's been with a mom and dad that, man, if I see myself liking a show too much, and I watch very few shows, but if I see myself, if I come into work and all I want to talk about is this show or whatever, once I realize that happened, I'll never watch it again. Not one time. Even deer hunting and stuff. I don't want every conversation that I'm having in the morning time about what deer I saw the day before or whatever. You know, that's the reason I like that we're all reading Jesus Cartel. Reading the Bible together, the Bible recap together, so we can talk about that. You know, I don't want to get so involved in anything outside of my relationship with God that it controls me in any way.
Yeah.
And I guess that has trickled down to my children.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
we see them doing the same thing. So
yeah, well, man, I think that is phenomenal. And you know, as far as your children go, and what we hope, not just for your children but for all of the people who believe alongside us, is that you become people that people desire to have around, and that people desire to be a part of what you have going on. I could tell you that no matter what I'm doing, and I'm just going to talk about Elena because we've been talking about Elena, whatever I'm doing, and it doesn't matter what it is, if I can get her involved, I will, because of the way that she is mature and the decisions that I've seen her make, and the fact that she's willing to sacrifice things she enjoys to accomplish something greater. Man, most people aren't wired that way, and it's hard to get to that point for a lot of people. And so people like that, it's like Elena didn't play sports, right? I didn't think so. But if I was putting together a sports team, I'd find a way to get her involved. Right. She wouldn't be playing third base, but I'd find a way to get her involved, because she's gonna bring value to whatever it is that she's involved in, because of those mindsets, and because of her willingness to not hoist her own wants above everything else. And you said the thing about the shows. I tell you one that I struggle with. I say that's a little much. I have found myself having struggled with it in the past. When we go on these long trips and stuff, there's a lot of like layover time in airports and stuff like that. So normally what I'll do before we go on some long trip is I'll download some little game on my phone, something silly, nothing, a Candy Crush or a Temple Run or something like that. It's very hard for me to get back home and delete that game right away. It always takes me about a week to be like, there's no use for this in your life. You know what I mean? And it's not like I'm just sitting there playing it all the time. It's just kind of like turning on music in your car. It's just like, nothing's really happening right now. Let me get my phone out and turn this game on and see what's going on. And it's like, that adds no value to my life whatsoever. But it always takes me a few days to like rewire myself beyond the waiting and beyond the nothing. And the thing is, it's like I've kind of gotten to a point now, like on the last trip, where I didn't do that, you know. And so we've advanced beyond the need for, like, I just found other stuff to do. I listened to I downloaded a bunch of books before I went, and I just listened to books. And it's like, was it boring from time to time? It's like, sure it was. But there's nothing wrong with being bored. Mm-mm. Like, people look at being bored like it's some sort of capital punishment. It's okay to be bored, especially the kids, man. Like, if you're listening to this and you got kids, let your kids be bored. Amen. That's where they develop creativity. If you just keep shoving stuff in their face and screens and let them be entertained, you know, it's kind of does the same thing that Elena was talking about. So she needed that outside voice. Oh. Your kids need something in front of their face. They need some sort of entertainment. And if they don't have it, they don't even know how to function. It's like, let them be bored. Amen. It's okay. They're going to survive. I promise you.
Yep. I agree with that 100%. You know, we, at the middle of this fall, you know, an area of my life that I was serving, I didn't have to serve in anymore, you know. And my first thought is, what am I going to replace the time that I was spending in that with? Yeah. You know. And so then I decided to not fill that time, you know. And so I decided to not add an extra role, an extra job or whatever at this time. Maybe not forever, but right now, you know, it's my nature to add something to that time slot. But I decided not to, which was really difficult for me to make that decision.
Yeah.
And so I make it. And then now what I see is all the rest of the areas of my life are now strengthened and better and more focused because I didn't add something else in that time slot. Mm-hmm. So the reality of it is you don't realize it at the time, but all of those things were taking hits.
Yep.
Because of me spending this additional time in this area. And I'd been spending it there for several years. And so you want to think that, well, I juggle well, I got it all together, you know, I'm okay. And every once in a while it gets a lot of balance, but for the most part, it's real good. You want to feel that way. And I did feel that way. But now I'm man enough to look back at it and say, okay, so now all these other areas are really better and they're more focused, and I'm actually able to think ahead instead of just reacting in these areas. Why? Because I didn't replace this time with anything else. I just allowed it to strengthen all these other things.
Yeah.
And that's been something really cool that just over the last week or two, I've been able to sit back and look and see that, man, I'm spending a lot more time in these areas. I'm a lot more focused in these areas, and I'm ahead in all these areas, but I still got more free time than most people would think that I have.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that that's really cool. Sometimes we can get too busy. We can get too many things going on. We can get all that. And so just us taking it away, even good things like Christian music.
Sure.
And being able to sit there in silence and focus more on God. You know, I make more plans for our ministries sitting in a deer stand than I do when I'm at the center getting paid to make plans for our ministry.
I understand.
Because when we're at the center, you know how it is. We're being pulled 100 different directions by 100 different people, plus all of our stuff. But when we go by ourselves and allow ourselves to be bored, go back to that.
Yep.
Then we come up, what we're really doing is, instead of being bored, we're allowing God access to our lives where we can really listen. And he's able to pour things into us that he wanted to before, but we couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
It's the same way with your kids, and I just want to reemphasize what Andrew said. Their creativity and that part of their brain is not going to be used as long as they're entertained.
Yeah.
You may say, oh, he's got a big imagination and all this. No, he doesn't. He's he's reinventing what's on this video game,
Yeah.
or what's on his YouTube or whatever. You want to see how big her imagination is? Let them be bored. Take away some of that, not a few minutes, but long enough to where they get past the taking an extra nap or this or that. Let them get past all that to where they really get bored, and then you will see creativity in their life
like you've never seen.
Before. I just remember one thing in particular to where Cooper wasn't watching any movies. He wasn't watching anything. He wasn't didn't really have all that going on, and you had asked him to replace these SD cards in the woods across the street from the house, and he goes over there and he leaves his phone at the house. And he goes over there to do that. It should have took 5 minutes. And he was gone over an hour, maybe closer to an hour and a half. We were actually leaving to go to his birthday supper and didn't know where he was. And because he didn't carry his phone with him, no Live 360, no nothing. And finally he shows back up. And we're like, dude, where you been? He's like, well, I replaced those SD cards for Mr. Andrew, and then I went and tried to see how far the ditch was back there, and then I saw this deer, and I watched this 8-point, and then I was going to see where this property line was, and just all this kind of stuff. And he had this whole image of how the deer lease could be better, and just thinking and all this kind of stuff. Why? Because he went over there out in nature. He's not some big sportsman or anything like that. This was different for him. He's not the person that, he goes hunting on a hunting lease, sits in a box stand, and then leaves and gets in his truck and comes home. But this was more. This was him being, letting his creativity come out, and him just being kind of out there with nature and kind of being guided by, it kind of sounds weird, but he's following the birds and the squirrels, and stuff, and just walking around. And it was really cool for him, and it did him a lot of good, and he come up with it on his own. But I don't think if he would have took his phone with him, he wouldn't have done it. Mainly might have been because he would get distracted and think about something on his phone, or may have been just because we texted him and told him to come back home because we were wondering where he was. But I really like that you said that, and I think this is not even really sure what we're supposed to talk about today, but it's a really big point for families and stuff. Not just kids, but allow yourself to get bored. Yeah. Don't add so much time. Elena, apparently you're inspiring us right now. You're inspiring us right now to cut some of the things off, to get rid of the silence, even the good things.
Yeah, and you'll never know.
Listen to God,
and you'll never know because you're not listening.
And but really, I love Andrew's point of let your kids get bored, and then you'll see their creativity.
Yeah, and let yourself get bored.
Amen. I agree.
Because a lot of the reason that people don't take their health serious is because they're so busy being entertained. And it's like, I've been working all day. It's time to be entertained. And so they go home and they try to find that. And it's like, workouts, not that they were ever easy for, people in the past, but they're much harder now because in your mind, you're losing something. Where before it's like, before it was like, I'm just going to go home and, do some more work at the house. I just left work. Now I got to go home and do work. So a workout don't sound so bad. But when you were going to go home and just be entertained, you feel like you're losing something. This is costing you more than just your health. And so, and people tie mental health to it a lot, but it's like, I've not met more mentally stable people than I meet that take care of themselves. Like those are the mentally stable people, not the ones that are just continuously entertained. As a matter of fact, there's usually kind of a facade of happiness for people that are in a state of constant entertainment or a need for constant entertainment. And so, you were just sharing that, you didn't replace some time that you were previously spending. So you don't have to spend that time anymore. And you were kind of looking for something to replace it with. You decided not to. And I want to make a point that I've made to my wife several times through the years, talking about all kinds of different parts of life, because this is something I say all the time. I reference my wife because she's had to hear it for the last 9 years. But everything has a cost. There is nothing that you will ever do that doesn't have a cost associated with it. Someone has to pay for that. And it's just that simple. And one of the dangers of being highly productive, which I would consider you, is that even maybe the fourth most important thing that you do, you might still do better than the next guy if it was the most important thing he did. And so a lot of times the temptation is, well, I'll just go ahead and do it since I'm going to be more efficient than he is. And so the kind of fool's game there is you've in your mind considered that, like, I made this more productive without a cost. It cost you something. It cost your family something. Yeah, it definitely does cost something. And so, working in ministry and being a father and a husband and all of these things, like, I love all people. I want to talk to all my friends about their relationships with the Lord, but it would be a lie to say that each one of those conversations doesn't have a cost associated with it. Every time I take a phone call and walk out of my house, someone's paying for that.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? And every time I ignore a phone call to stay in the house, someone's paying for that. Yep. There's a cost. And so life is about learning what the cost of each action is and figuring out where your, mental finances are best spent to grow the kingdom. Amen. And then also listening to the Lord, who's undoubtedly, if you can get quiet long enough, speaking to you where that time and energy should be spent. And so I just think there's an incredible amount of value there.
I do too. And I was going to say something really similar, and I'll share it just from a little different angle. If I'll put it out there for us. If you ever catch me and Andrew saying, "No, I didn't have time for that," call us out on it, because we don't really believe that. No. What we really believe is, hey, I decided to not spend the time on that. Yeah. I heard from a pastor one time. I'm trying to think of who it was. It might have been Pastor Danny Reed that shared it with me. Another pastor. It might have been him. But he just said that we don't ever let any of our staff members tell people how busy they are.
Yeah.
Ever. Because we don't want to generate a culture of we're too busy for you, or even we're too busy, but we're going to fit you in, And the reason, he was saying that is because we do get to choose where our time goes. And that's basically what you're saying. There is a count the cost to everything that you choose to do or what you choose not to do. So if there is things you're going to prioritize lists. So if you prioritize being entertained, then that's going to give less time to do other things.
Yep.
Including maybe whatever it was that God wanted you to do, or whatever your family needed you to do, or whatever your job needed you to do, or whatever your ministry needed to do. Man, I can't believe I'm fixing to go here. But so many times in the church world and, in the ministry world, when people feel like they got too much going on, the first thing they want to cut is their ministry.
Yep.
I'm too busy. I'm not going to play keyboard at the church anymore. We're like, okay, well, to play keyboard at the church, you don't even have to practice. You've done all these songs. If you do have to practice, it's only like 10 minutes because you're really good at it. You're not somebody new that really has to put in work. Some people have to put in a lot of work. You don't have to put in work. So you have to come to our practice for 45 minutes before church starts. and then you were already going to be at church anyhow.
Yeah.
Anyhow, because you're not going to not come to church, right? No, I'm going to church, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So you're giving up an hour of your week to leave your house, come to practice, because you were going to church anyhow. So you might as well be playing keyboard at church while you're there. So you think that by you quitting the worship team, that this is going to add a huge difference to the amount of time that you have during your week. Mm-hmm. And it's not true.
Yeah.
We could cut out one of your shows and it would take out way more time than you're spending on the praise and worship team.
Yep.
But so many times when people get busy, they want to first cut out one of the best things they do all week.
Yeah.
You've
done one thing this week to build the kingdom, and you just cut it out.
You just cut it out. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, come on, man. But we see that so many times that people get so busy, and the first thing they want to cut out is what they're doing for the Lord. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make any sense.
I'm going to say two things regarding that.
Let's do it.
One, and I'm going to try to hurt your feelings. Not you, but like whoever's listening that didn't like what you just said. I'm going to specifically try to hurt your feelings, right? If you're feeling burnout, specifically with ministry, but probably across the board, but I know for sure with ministry because I've been doing this a long time. If you're feeling burnout, it's not because of your poor time management. It's because of your poor communication. Something happened somewhere that you didn't like. And rather than using proper communication to resolve that and be able to move forward, you have let it fester into your life to where now showing up feels like a burden. And it's not because of the time. It's because of your unforgiveness. And as long as you hold that unforgiveness, even 5 minutes will feel like burnout to you because you can't stand the fact that you're even there. That has nothing to do with time management. It has everything to do with your poor communication. And I'm not saying that everyone else involved communicated perfectly. That's not me putting all the fault on you as far as communication, but you have the ability to fix things no matter where your position is, whether you're the one at the top of the ladder or the bottom of the ladder. There is a way to lead up and down that chain of command, and if you do it well, you don't ever have to experience those things. And so I do a lot, have done a lot for a lot of years in a lot of departments. I wear a lot of hats, and I'm not feeling burnout. Why? Because I communicate really well. And so when I'm displeased with something, I voice it in a way that's respectful and honoring, but also makes my stance and expectations clear. I now receive from them the either rebuttal or agreement, just depends on the situation. I've experienced a lot of both. And we come to an agreement and we move forward. Me and you had a conversation a week or so ago, maybe longer. I don't remember. Everything kind of runs together for me now, where you and I had a disagreement. You had a voice and I said, hey, look, man, I disagree with you and I'd like to talk about it. And so we had a conversation, and by the end of the conversation, I told you, hey, look, I'd like to concede my side of the conversation. I recognize now after talking to you that I was wrong. And it's not about anything other than if I've got the wherewithal to bring up a problem, I better have the wherewithal to have the humility to recognize I was in error in that situation. And so recognizing that, I'm no longer displeased with the situation, and I'm able to move forward in a really good way because I was able to communicate about it. And it was even in our disagreement, there was no raised tone, there was no anything. It was just respect and honor as the way communication should be done when it's done properly. And everybody left the conversation feeling good, And so that's the first thing. The second thing is this, as far as the do you have time thing, I ask people this all the time. Like, hey, man, you been working out lately? They're like, man, I really hadn't had time. I said, how much are you sleeping?
Right.
Almost never does anyone who tells me they don't have time tell me they also don't sleep. You know what I mean? Like, if you're getting 6 hours or more of sleep, you can make more time. You can make more time. Now, if you're getting less than 6 hours of sleep, then we do need to have a time management conversation. If you don't have time and you're not sleeping, then yes, a time management conversation is in order. But I promise you, you can function on 6 hours of sleep. I do it on less a lot, and it's easy to do. It's a discipline thing, but it can 100% be accomplished. But usually, more times than not, those people aren't sleeping 6 hours. They're sleeping 8 to 10.
That's right.
And yeah, there's time. There's
Amen.
time. Yeah. Hey, look, man. We didn't get into anything that I had planned for us to talk about. We did that episode 100% off the cuff, other than the get to know you segment. And I can tell you that I had a really good time with this. So I'm excited to hear the responses. Also, shout out to my go-getters. Y'all, a lot of people talking about the delegation box from last episode, and some people come up to me telling me they know they're in the go-getter box. Shout out to you guys. I'm team go-getter. So I'm with you in that. Love you guys. You got anything else?
No, man. We appreciate y'all. Hey, keep sharing, keep telling people about Jesus Cartel, and we love y'all.
Yep. Be good.